One of the major issues Nigeria has is a lack of database, so when certain crimes occur, there is nothing to compare it to, making it difficult to know if the perpetrator is a serial offender or not. In 2019, 15 girls were found gagged, tied up and lifeless in hotel rooms across Rivers State. But at the back of my mind, I'm wondering, is this really the only known Nigerian serial offender in modern day? How many more active serial offenders are out there that we do not know about? Welcome, my darlings, to another case with me. If you're seeing me for the first time, my name is Annie. Today's case is from Nigeria. This is the case of Gracious David West. Gracious David West was born in 1980 in Buguma, a town in the Asari-Toru local government area of the Kalabari Kingdom in Rivers State, Nigeria. It is said that growing up was pretty tough for David West because of the very rough childhood he had. He grew up in a polygamous home. We all know how that is. It is not easy growing up in this type of environment, but he was an only child of his mother and the only son of his father. It is not clear how many kids his father had, but David West and his mother lived on their own, away from the rest of the family for obvious reasons, to get away from the troubles of communal living. When David West was a young adult, his mother was poisoned. The circumstances surrounding this situation is kind of vague, but after she passed away, David West, as the only son of his father, was put under a lot of pressure to be very successful to take care of the family. A lot was expected of him, but he could not meet up. He had harbored this anger in his heart against women for a long time because he felt his stepmother was responsible for his mother's demise, but he never acted on it. At a point in his life, he joined a mafia-style street gang that sprung out of the armed militant groups that are notorious in Nigeria for engaging in criminal acts of violence and voodoo. Specifically, in the South-South region, they are known as the Greenlanders, aka Dembam. There was nothing extraordinary about David West for most of his life, up until in June of 2019. According to him, he just all of a sudden began to have this irresistible urge to take lives. So every single night from that June, he began to prowl the streets of Portharcourt in his vehicle looking for women to harm. It's not exactly clear why he chose to harm women. The only explanation that seems plausible is the fact that women are the weaker gender and would be easy to subdue, and also because of his hatred for his stepmother, whom he accused of taking his mother's life. So this was his modus operandi. He would drive around town looking for a target. When he finds one, he will lure the victim to a local hotel while claiming to be a military officer. Then he and the victim would first of all have a meal together, then they will proceed to the room to get intimate. Then after they sleep off in the middle of the night, David West would then wake up the victim and threaten her with a knife. He would rob these women of their valuables, money, jewelry, phones and bank cards. Then he cut strips out of the hotel bed sheets or pillowcases, tie his victims' hands and legs, gag them, then he would turn up the volume of the television as he manually strangled his victims with his bare hands or the strips from the bed sheets. One of his very first crimes was in July of 2019. So a beautiful young lady known as Precious Maureen Ewuru was getting several Facebook messages on her messenger from an unknown admirer who seemed to be very consistent. So she replies this message, and that admirer happened to be David West. They began to communicate, and after a while they agreed to meet face to face, so they began to make arrangements. David West had told Maureen that he resided outside of Portharcourt, which was a lie by the way. So according to him, he was coming in just to visit her, so he told her to go book a hotel, make all the arrangements and reservation and pay the bill. According to him, when he comes, he will now refund her double of what she has spent and also take very, very good care of her. Excited, Maureen told her close friends about David West, but she didn't exactly say his name or show them his picture, so they didn't know who he was. So on July the 31st, the two met up at the hotel room Maureen had reserved. They ate, they drank, then they got intimate. As they slept off, David West wakes up in the middle of the night and ties Maureen up. He then gags her, then he snores the life out of her by tying a ligature around her neck. After this, he sneaks out to his car and zooms off. The following morning, when Maureen didn't come out of the hotel room and the intercom was going unanswered, hotel management opened the door to find her lifeless, with her hands and her feet bound, and the ligature, which was a cutout from the hotel sheet, was still around her neck. While the news was still spreading around the country, David West, on the 14th of August, drove himself to Woji village and entered a hotel called Grand Venice. It was at about 10 to 11 p.m. thereabout, and he sat at the bar drinking by himself. He sees a beautiful young girl who was sitting with her friends drinking and calls her to come join him. She introduced herself to him as Jennifer Nwokocha. She was from Omoku in Ndoni in Rivers State. They got talking and they agreed to spend the night in each other's arms. David agreed to pay Jennifer 10,000 naira for the night, and she was okay with it. Please resist that urge to judge Jennifer. If she had a better way of making money, she would not have accepted this at all. David suggested that they should use the room that Jennifer had already booked. That's how it works. They always have their own room booked, just in case. He tells her he would also refund her the room fare. So they ate, they drank, and they go up to the room. By midnight, David West wakes up and, in his usual MO, he ties Jennifer up and robs her of her possessions. Jennifer begs for her life, and he promised not to harm her if she cooperates, so she does. But at the end of it, he still ended up taking her lives anyways. Then he gets up and walks casually out of the hotel to his car and drives off, only to target another female, and the circle just continued for David West. So many women were found deceased at different hotels at different times within a short period of time, under the same circumstances. So it didn't take long for people to put two and two together. This guy was using low-cost hotels with poor security and without CCTV cameras in the city center and on the outskirts of Portharcourt. At 15 different times, David West got away with crimes. By this time, the entire country was aware that there was an active serial offender operating in Nigeria and in Portharcourt specifically. Women were scared to walk about alone, especially in the city of Portharcourt, where most of these crimes were being committed. Scared, women took to the street to protest. They wanted authorities to step up to the plate and put an end to the crimes and keep them safe. As investigations began, first it wasn't even easy getting information on who the perpetrator might be. There was trouble getting CCTV footage. The hotels where this crime had taken place, like I said before, were low-cost hotels. It was either the hotels didn't have one, or if they had, it wasn't functioning. But as the police began to take into custody hotel staff for negligence, a lot of the hotels buckled up and installed cameras, functioning cameras. Soon enough, the hard work began to pay off. One thing about David West was that he was not being careful at all, so getting caught was something that was imminent. So one Monday night at about 11:30 p.m. thereabout, David West walked in and checked into a hotel along Stadium Road in Rumo-Mosi with a female. The next morning, the lady was found deceased. The hotel management immediately knew this was the handwork of the serial offender on the loose because he had tied up the lady in the same manner as the others. So they immediately went to the surveillance footage for that day, and here he was, David West, standing out like a sore thumb because of the way he was acting. The police was called. They took the CCTV footage and got a still image which they put out there to the public and asked the public for help in identifying whoever this person was. They were hoping that someone could recognize him. Within a few short hours, social media was awash with pictures of the suspected eliminator of women. One early morning in September, a 23-year-old woman whom he had taken to a hotel, who would have been his next victim, her name was Benita Etin, woke up in the middle of the night as David West was tying her up and preparing to end her life. She began to scream and fight. Her shout alerted the lodgers and they came to her rescue, and that was how she was saved because David West had to run out of there quickly. Shortly after this incident, David West is somewhere in his hotel room surfing the net when he comes across his picture. Seeing that his picture was everywhere, the first thing that came to his mind was to run. So he packs up from his hotel and hops on the next available vehicle going to the neighboring Akwa Ibom state. Unknown to him, the police were already closing in on him. I'm not exactly sure how they got his number, or I'm thinking that he might have written it down at one of the hotels, or someone had recognized him from the pictures circulating on the social media. The police somehow began to track his cell phone, so they knew that he was actually on his way out of Rivers State. They told the policemen who were at the checkpoints on the way out of Rivers State, these men searched every single vehicle on that route until they came face to face with David West sitting comfortably in an Akwa Ibom bound vehicle. On September 19, 2019, David West was arrested and returned back to Portharcourt to face the music. David West didn't deny what he did at first. He said he didn't know why he did what he did to these women. It was a strong urge he couldn't resist. In October of 2019, David West was arraigned in court where he pleaded guilty to 9 of the murder charges against him, but he pleaded not guilty to the charge of the attempted murder of the victim who survived his attack. The case dragged on until 2020. During one of his court appearances on the 23rd of March 2020, David West, when presented with the CCTV footage from the different hotels he had taken his victim to, denied he was the person in any of the images, even though it was glaring that he was the one on the footage with his victims. In fact, this man that had confessed before now said that he didn't know what the prosecuting counsel was talking about and that, to the best of his knowledge, he hadn't committed any offense. I don't know if he was delusional at this point because there was a mountain of evidence against him at this point. David West in court was behaving kind of erratically. He was trying to interject, knowing fully well that he had a lawyer present. On the 11th of June 2020, the judge gave 21 days to counsels involved in the trial to file their written addresses, and then the case was adjourned. There was a lot of back and forth on this case until October of 2020, when David West was finally found guilty of murder and attempted murder and was given the capital punishment. He is to be executed by hanging. The thing about this David West guy was that he wasn't remorseful. He was acting like it was just another day in the park. During some of his interviews, he said that he was a Christian who attended the Lord's Chosen Church at Obi-Igbo. He had even claimed that he had confessed to the pastor of his church that he had been killing women, and allegedly the pastor reportedly invited him to a crusade prayer service to heal him. Well, it seems like the healing didn't work because David West had claimed more lives after the healing section, as he admits to taking the lives of 6 other women in Abia, Imo, Edo, Lagos, and Edo states, but he was not charged for those because of lack of evidence. David West's known victims are Maureen Ewuru, Jennifer Nwokocha, Nikki Dora, Linda Waripa, Dorcas Francis, Blessing Effiong, Rose Samuel, Kelechi Bridget Onoha, Patience Hamo, and Atonia Ibe. During his trial, none of the family members of these women came to court, apart from one of the fathers of the girls who attended only the first day of court. It was like the families were ashamed of the girls. It doesn't matter what they did for a living, they are still human beings that deserve respect. A hotel manager who dumped one of the corpses amongst the refuse in front of a residential building was also charged, but that's by the way. David West remains in prison as he awaits his execution. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please like and subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Until next video, bye.